Oh, boy.
Good evening. We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, April 10th. Jeff, you able to hear us remotely?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good. First item on the agenda, approval of the minutes from February 13th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Discussion, possible action, suspense list, grand list 2021.
Okay, as we do every year, this time of year, this is our recommendation to put those items from the motor vehicle and personal property onto the suspense list. We have a total of $151,859 to be moved to suspense. And as always, although they are on suspense, we still are able to collect.
And how does that compare to, do you know how that compares to last year's number?
It's about the
Same?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Is this something called agenda or
I'm sorry.
regular new business?
This is item number 2?
No, but if we were to approve this, are we approving this to go to the consent agenda?
Yes.
For,
Yes, sir.
oh, that's the
Council.
nature of the motion, okay. Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I move that we place on the consent agenda for the next meeting of the town council a recommendation that the suspense list for the grand year 2021 be approved and that the accounts described in that list be placed on in suspense status.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 3-0, Joanne, if you didn't hear Jeff.
Okay,
He did
thank
raise
you.
his hand, so.
Yes, is that, yep.
Item 3,
Yeah, sorry.
discussion, possible action, transfer of funds, Internal Revenue Service Board of Education, is that
Internal Service Fund.
Internal Service, thank you. I'm like, it does say Internal Revenue, I'm like, Internal Service Fund.
I wrote that myself.
I was like, wait, is that right? All right,
Oh.
so who is going to explain this one?
I will do that. So we received, there's 2 parts in here. The second page is the memo from Superintendent of Schools. The Internal Service Fund, as it should be called, is the fund that has been set aside for the number of years while Board of Ed had their self reimbursing fund for health insurance. As we have both Board of Ed and the town switched over to the state insurance plan, they will no longer be doing the internal service fund. They're not going to do self-funding. It's the requirement for the internal service fund is to keep it open after the close of the last fiscal year for at least 6 months to be sure that we don't have any pending claims, and they have done so. We have the letter from Board of Ed requesting that the funds go to the non-reoccurring for capital projects, as they've done with other unexpended funds in the past. Because this is an internal service fund, I contacted our auditors just to get some confirmation. In the resolution, I mentioned that with it being an internal service fund, the expectation is that it has always been restricted for a purpose, and for us to transfer it, it should go into a fund that is of a similar structure, being restricted, not a general operating. Auditors did say that their first recommendation was to put it to an OPEB, post-employment benefits. However, for Board of Ed, they expend about $20,000 per year, so $1.6 million, spending at $20,000. We're making the recommendation with Board of Ed to do the transfer to non-reoccurring for school improvements.
Okay.
$1.6 million.
And that 1.6 million, could you just kind of, I don't want to say background, how many years did they take to build up those funds? When were they on the self-funded and just, I don't need an exact.
Yeah,
but
it's been several years. I'd say my best estimates got to be at least 5, possibly even 10 years that they've been doing a quasi-self-insured. The insurance fund, particularly when they were with Cigna, Cigna had required that, although it was a self-insurance, and that was called a quasi-self-insurance, that they had to put, I know in their case, in Board of Ed's case, they had to put at least $800,000 of available cash to start up a year. So this is accumulated to close out with the 1.6s. Kind of not unexpected. We've watched it through the financial audit, ranging from anywhere from the 400,000 up to the 1 million, depending on the fluctuation of claims.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I'm asking, so this isn't something that was in last year's budget that we budgeted for, didn't need. It took place over a multi-year period to build up.
Absolutely.
We've switched insurances to a non-self-funded program, so now this is no longer needed, and now we get to take those funds and reuse them for a different purpose.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well said, yes.
So just a little more background on that. So when you say quasi-self-funded, what does that mean? Is that a high deductible plan in effect, and you need to have the money set aside to meet that?
They had, initially, Board of Ed was going self-funded, then they went on with Cigna, so it was kind of you set a high deductible premium up front, but then the claims are paid down, so you always have to have a minimum premium set aside with the quasi, and then the claims have to go in and be paid off of this set-aside dollar amount, and that's the Cigna program that we both left.
So is that in effect, what, you're agreeing with what I said or not? I'm just trying to understand the
yes.
nature of quasi-self-funded. So
It
it's
is.
high deductible, it's this pool of money that's, to me, in effect, a relatively high deductible component of the old plan that we are no
Correct.
longer participating in.
Right, yes.
So is a trade-off to that now, though? I know this is within the Board of Ed budgets. Now, the trade-off is going to be much higher premiums now. If it's not self-funded in this manner, is a trade-off there that they'll be paying more for their coverage?
Well, I'll try to put it in a perspective of, I'd say, for example, on the town side, I'll talk a little bit about how when we severed the Cigna plan, that was the quasi-funding. On the town side, the agreement or the understanding with Cigna is that if there's any excess that's remaining on the fund, it stays with the department, in that case, the Board of Ed. On the town side, we had an opposite scenario where we're actually in the negative. And fortunately, we don't have to pay that back. So as they were having good claims, they had it accumulating a balance. Town side, we were in the opposite situation. We were probably about $500,000 claims over what the reserves were recommended. So we had chosen to go together into this the state plan. It's actually less expensive than what the town and Board of Ed together with the Cigna plan, because they were actually recommending for renewal an increase of about 25% to renew. And when we went into the state plan, it was an offer of about 10 to 11%. So it's ultimately going to the state plan was a major savings for both sides.
Okay, so my point was, this 1.6 million, this truly is freed up money. It's not that a chunk of that will be needed to fund,
No.
more expensive premiums for the replacement plan. That's not the case.
No, it's where our expectations for health insurance now with the state, this will be the second year going in the next year. And it's kind of a market increase, about 8% that we're looking at. So this will not be needed to help out.
Okay. Second question.
Mona,
Oh, sorry.
so I have a question. All the money that eventually went to this was basically came out of their operating budget to pay for their healthcare premiums, right?
Correct.
So what's the rationale? We're taking money that came out of their operating budget and now we're putting it into capital non-recurring. Why is it not going back against operating?
And again, this was recommendation more so from the audit, is when it goes to their operating and then gets put into this fund, which is being held for multi-years. It became a different structure. It became a reserved fund. And the audit recommendation is that once it's in a structured fund, to keep it in something that has a structured purpose. It does not become operating. So it really should stay in a restricted fund as the internal service fund. Because again, these were not just monies that were sitting in their operating. If it was only operating, they could have returned it at the end of the year. What it was operating, moved into an internal service fund for future spending. So again, it's the recommendation from the audit that any transfers out of a restricted fund should stay with that same format.
When you say the audit, who's doing the audit and who are they auditing?
Oh, this is our financial auditors, oh my goodness, I call them Coopers, Clifton Larson.
This is part of our annual financial audit.
Correct, yes.
Okay, I guess I'm still scratching my head. If we expended money out of the operating budget and we're getting money back, why is that? It seems to be a situation that's becoming overly complicated when we spent money out of one pocket, we should put it back in that pocket to me, or we should be considering it. I don't know. There's a piece I'm missing, I guess, that the auditors are saying. I don't know if it's a recommendation, if it's a must do or like to do or nice to do, or I guess I'm still trying to understand.
Yeah, it's a recommended, not a must. Again, the recommended was to keep it same structure, same purpose, which was the ideal, which was the OPEB, but to keep it in the same structure. And again, this was not their operating, because general operating is going to stay with the one fiscal year. This stops becoming a general operating expenditure, although we gave it in the 1 year. It went into an internal service fund where it was going to accumulate for a restricted purpose. So it became a not an operating as it went into the reserve fund. And that's what made it different than putting it back in the pocket.
But I mean, I'm just trying to understand, because we're taking something that came out of operations to pay for healthcare. There's excess funds for, a variety of reasons you said, and now they say it's more appropriate to put it against school improvements than back in the operation. I don't to me, logically, I don't understand that. Alan or Bill, were you, did you scratch your head on this, or?
Well, I guess, my question is, or maybe it's a comment, that it seems that if this 1.6 million is now available for capital, that may allow us to accelerate certain projects that are in the pipeline for the next few years that are, that some money is set aside for in chunks, in installments. I think, for example, I think we have like a roof project for West Hill, I believe it's
West
West
Hill.
Yes.
Yes.
that, as things now stand, is not projected to be fully funded for a couple of years out. If we get this chunk of money, if the Board of Ed gets this money available to it now, maybe we can accelerate that and not wait for those costs to increase the next couple of years. Am I reading that correctly? That's maybe part of what's driving this?
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
the purpose. That's why that's why we're recommending that we go from one restricted fund to another restricted fund, as required or recommended by the auditors. So it's capital non-recurring fund, and the internal service fund is a similar structured fund. So it's one structured fund to another structured fund, both for the Board of Ed.
And I know this isn't, you can't commit, or, or this isn't binding or anything, but is sort of the momentum for that, specifically, potentially the West Hill roof project?
Major project. Yeah,
Okay.
if I could I always want to go back, if we did decide, which I imagine you can, because again, it's a recommendation, not a requirement, you want to put it to general fund, we would keep in mind that the only other place, if you're making it operating, it would be going into the general fund balance. And as you know, we've put in the new ordinance that says we will keep anything in fund balance until we've reached the 10%. So if we were to make the option and put this to the general fund balance, it would basically reside there as we get ourselves into a position to accumulate to the 10%. So you'd be having the funds not usable, and you're correct. We could put it in non-reoccurring and put it directly to school improvements, which is, and we do have the West Hill school roof, which needs to be funded in CIP.
So just so, because I'm hearing a couple of different things, because Ray, you actually said the auditors require this. Is that,
No, I think
or is it recommended or required? 'Cause I'm hearing different things.
Recommend.
Okay, so it's not, so this is basically our decision that this is the best use for the money. It's not that we have, okay.
Correct.
Because the way it was brought, it sounded like the auditors are forcing us to do this because there's some rule that makes it that way. But I guess my suggestion would be to approve this, but I would have this go under new business as opposed to consent agenda, because I think it may need some discussion at the council level.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
The dollar threshold, I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. And
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff, just to kind of answer the question of which fund it goes into, you know, at the end of the day, to me, it's kind of like a right pocket, left pocket, because we're going to go into the budget workshop and make decisions there. So it really doesn't drive.
No, that's, make sure it's our decision, not something that's being dictated to us. So I just want to understand the parameters around that, so.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah, I think going to new business is the right move, so. That way, if there are questions, they could be asked at the council meeting.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so
Okay, so I move that this committee move to the new business portion of the next town council agenda, the proposed transfer of funds from the internal service account to the Board of Ed's capital improvement fund.
I'll second that.
any further discussion? No, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I don't know if you're able to see Jeff, okay.
Thank you.
We lose your audio on that, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Next item is the update on the special revenue fund.
Okay, let's see what we have. So on special revenue, I've only highlighted a couple of items which probably may be of interest. We've talked about that CDBG small cities. We've gotten our commitment letters from Newington and Weathersfield to go forward. So next you'll be hearing on this will be the public hearing. And then going to the state to make the recommendation to do that transfer. So for now, we'll still see that in the year-to-date balance. I had marked the other industrial park, which is transferred already. Marked out recreation program just because of the high dollar amount. Just let people know that this is common at this time of year. They start doing their major collections, getting ready for the summer programs coming up. So we'll watch that balance move downward. And pointing out for asset forfeiture, they are now looking at the state bid for vehicles for that. It will not absorb the 242 entirely, but that's the expenditures over 5,000, which we'd let you know about as they go along. And other than that, I don't think we have any highlights.
So the asset forfeiture, these are 3 new vehicles for, I assume, the police department?
Correct.
And the-
Potentially 3. We're looking at state bid, so what they have
Okay.
available.
And these are replacing existing cars
Yes.
or adding new?
Oh, no, they're replacing. We did a review of the aging of their vehicles. Right now, they have, I think the average age was a 2017. The newest vehicle in their fleet for the cruisers is a 2023. So they'd like to keep the rotation so that the age doesn't become older on those. I think the average miles was about 70,000 on an average vehicle. So we've got a number of these that would come off that are in the 150,000 miles for a cruiser, which is high.
So we've had a number of conversations in recent years about trying to transition to electric. We're talking about 3 vehicles here. I mean, where are we on that? I mean, 3 vehicles seems like, you know, potentially a little bit of a difference maker, or at least a way to kickstart that transition. So where are we on that?
Do you recall this?
No, I don't think we have actually gone beyond that $30,000 fund that was started last year. That was a request from Council Emanuel to include $30,000.
I think that was potential for a charging station, or?
A charging station, but nothing for electric vehicles at this point.
I understand that, but the idea for that, of setting aside the money for a charging station, was to at least get some of the groundwork in place to allow for that transition. And I guess that hasn't happened. That money has been set aside, nothing has been done with it.
Correct.
So, you know, the concept was floated a year ago. We haven't advanced the ball on it. And here we are looking at an expenditure of 3 new vehicles. either we're just gonna double down and keep doing what we've been doing, or we're gonna begin this transition, so that's, I think we should have a conversation about that.
And I think at least I'm recalling from the police chief, was that there was not the interest in the cruisers going to the electric. I think our last conversation on that was going to be more of the staff vehicles. It's that-
That was the original. We're looking at pool vehicles over at Community Development Engineering, those vehicles first.
Building inspectors.
Building inspector, zoning, engineers, possibly even facilities too, before we dipped into the police department.
People who drive at a more leisurely pace, I guess. I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to. It seems like the cruisers, they don't trust the electrical to have the kind of the giddy up that they want, or what's really the obstacle here?
They're not thrilled. I don't know. It's a mindset that many police departments have. We would have to also invest in the infrastructure also.
Well, that's what the $30,000 was for.
Well, that would cover maybe one charging station.
Well, we do have other charging stations in town.
Right, that we
Just
have-
like a gas station.
It'd be like us.
You can pay to
It'd
charge.
be like a police guard going to the Citgo station to gas up. It's a public, I don't know if that's appropriate to do that.
You put the building inspector, but not the cruiser.
Yeah, well, even that,
So, I mean, are they available in the marketplace, electric police cruisers, which, again, would have certain features? You have to have, for example, a safety barrier between the front and back seat, and whatever other type of specific amenities there are for police cruisers. Are they available in the market right now, do we know?
I haven't researched it, but I would imagine they are, but we could research it.
I mean, I think we should.
They're on the state bid. so
I
we
think
have to
Tesla
keep that in
does,
mind
I
as
think
well.
Ford Mustangs do.
So,
Yeah, I think there's at least
I mean, I think we should start at least looking into it. It seems like this is a can that we're just keep kicking down the road, and I understand there may be, some initial resistance to it, but let's shine some light on it and see what's available, and get everybody better informed about whether it's a viable option or not. But at a certain point, we need to make that step, and it seems when you're talking about expenditure of 3 vehicles, that's potentially a healthy start. And again, keeping an open mind on it, I think we all need to know what viable options are out there right now. What are the pros and cons?
Okay.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, Bill, I'd like to understand, is $30,000 for one charging, is that a level 3 charging station? And
I don't know.
it still strikes me as high. I'm sorry?
I think when we
We
put the
don't
30,
know. It was just a recommendation during the last budget, at the last budget meeting, that we just put aside $30,000.
yeah, I think it included this charging station and a vehicle.
Not for 30,000.
No, we
'cause
were
it
gonna do
was big, I think, for
30,000 a
one
year.
charge.
Right.
Well, yeah, so I
So I was
think,
trying
It was
to,
a
I think we need a
start.
better understanding of the vehicles, what else goes with it, what would we need by way of infrastructure, charging stations, whatever else, what would that cost? How helpful might that 30,000 be? That was just sitting in an account not doing anything. I mean, we should be actively looking for a way to put it to productive use. So I think the homework we're talking about here goes beyond the vehicles, but also what goes with it to at least have a full understanding on how to kickstart this process.
We'll look at
and,
it.
and just to remind me, the $30,000 that Bill's referring to, is that strictly toward a electric police vehicle, or can it be any electric town vehicle?
No, it was not restricted to police.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, Jeff, along those, I thought that was to kind of make a public charging station available somewhere at the town complex.
Maybe right.
Because to take to put one within your home, it's like $1,000.
Yeah, no.
And so this is a little bit different than someone putting it within the garage at the police department.
Right.
The only other, and just to kind of continue this, I'm not positive if we had this conversation with Chief Collette or if it was with Chief Custer when we were looking at it with the ARPA funds back during COVID. So,
It may have been Custer, you're correct.
so maybe the shift in leadership has changed the thought process a little bit.
Good point.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll definitely look into it
Okay.
and research, your recommendation.
Thank you.
to the agenda. Update on reserve for capital and non-reoccurring expenditures through March 31st.
And we don't have very much of new activity in there. Maybe an increase in the unassigned, which is basically interest on the fund that accumulates, and nothing new to add in that sheet.
Well, that's an easy one. State aid to municipalities.
Okay. So we are on track. Everything so far we've gotten in. We've seen we already got the second ECS, and I think I've made notes before that the municipal revenue sharing line, the 221, 199, is not going to be received this year per the state.
Okay. So the only fund left to receive this year is the Mashantucket Pequot grant then, which isn't due till June.
Correct, and then the remaining ECS, which will come in April.
Oh, I thought you said that came in already.
No, the second.
Oh, the second one,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
January, yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess we're up to the monthly financial report.
Okay. So let me change my gears for a second. As far as the tax revenues, go to that particular sheet. It's pointing out on the benchmark, it's at a negative 899, and that is on the low side. We've been doing quite a bit of digging into that, and it's a combination of some of the the economy and people paying or not paying. But we also have had some adjustments during the year as a result of the reval. So we still have some settlements in there. So we've got this budgeted funds to collect, and they will not be collectible because the adjustments have occurred during the year. Again, that's still bringing us at that 99.6% so far, which is a good standing, but just the dollar amount, I'd like to point out that we're watching that has caused the situation that we put a freeze on expenditures for anything not needed, just to see if it'll help us soften the blow.
What was the percentage you gave, Mona?
It's, as far as the benchmark, the 99.67, but yes, they're at the 98.9.
Okay, I don't know if I'm on the right page. I'm looking at the document that
Okay.
says Tax
Yeah.
Collectors Monthly Report as of March 31st, 2025. And so,
You go down to March.
page 2A,
Yes.
okay, and so the numbers that you were just quoting, where would I find that?
I know, you're looking at the percentage collected, which is the 98.9 toward the top. Are you
Yep,
correct?
seeing that,
Yes.
yep.
And when I was making my comment was on the benchmarking toward that, the lower right side, that we are at like about 99.6% of our way through the benchmark, or basically we're 100% collected at this
Got it.
point in time.
Yep,
So what we're seeing for that, because we're so close to 100% of the year, we are going to probably come in around that lower 98, 99%. We don't have, I guess I should say, we don't have many opportunities toward the end of the year based on the average collections to go much higher than where we are.
you're just in mop-up mode right now. So
Correct.
can you project that out from percentage to a dollar? So you think we're about 900 light right now. How does that project out by June 30?
Our expectations is that we should be collecting at least another 200,000 to 300,000, so we could
So looking at a shortfall.
still looking at least a
That's just-
500,000 under on that, yes.
Okay.
So aside from my tax revenue situation, we talked about the municipal revenue sharing not coming in, so another 221,000 not coming. Others areas such as the building and conveyance, they are actually doing above target, 81%, 89%. We've got the insurance revenue, just pointing out, if you look at the detail pages, it looks high. Again, that's the reimbursements for workers' comp, and we've had a high number of workers' comp this year. As far as expenditures, again, we put the freeze in place. Salaries are basically on target. We're battling not only with the revenue issue, but we've got some overtime, patrol overtime, that's on the high side. Much of that can be covered by salaries, because some of this was due to vacancies. Other portion of that will just remain over budget and have to be covered with contingency. And some of those were the workers' comp issues. Highway overtime, it's ended up over budget at 115%, due to basically the either leaf collection or the winter season. And let's see, rather than reading the entire summary, I think otherwise we have legal tends to jump out at you. And again, we've talked about that one. We've got the in-house person covering for vacancy, or at least assisting in covering. And human services, tree service, again, over budget, seasonal, and weather-related. We've got 8 months of Board of Ed in, and all 4 quarters for insurance are reflected. So if there's any detailed questions.
Are we comfortable we have enough within the contingency to cover the overtime through the end of the year? No planned no announced retirements or?
If you look at the expenditures, we've already had a couple of retirements. We had one in the police department that was, on the larger side. So I see my contingency is depleted to about $300,000. I believe that will cover most of the overtime, and in all honesty, I think having the freeze, we will probably see a year-end closeout transfer and having some departments picking up shortfalls in others.
And then in the CIP capital improvements line,
Yes.
there's still like 1.9 million in the fund. Are those for future projects or projects that have just been delayed? Where are we with those?
What those are, again, this is our concept of doing the reserves. So it's the largest one being the 600,000 for Board of Ed. I think they've got about 3 each. I don't have it in front of me, about close to 400,000 remaining. So at year end, that will transfer into non-reoccurring. Same situation will happen with the about 250,000 from facilities. We did the reserve for that. Anything unexpended will transfer out. The piece for facilities, I'm trying to get to my page and run it through you quickly, but the majority of it is reserves. And then we have the RLE, which is going to be offset by any overages in utilities. If you remember, RLE was the agreement with Eversource to do all the zero interest improvements. So when they hit the electric bill, you'll see them charged there. So you do have a good, I'd say about 1.3 million, 600,000, 444 for roads, 200 from facilities that will be transferred at year end to keep up with our plan to do reserves for future projects.
Okay. Oh, that's fair. That's what we put it there for. Any other questions for Mona?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Do we have anything for other?
Nothing for other.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Jeff.